Hello, everyone, and welcome into the final bet. The Pelicans season is over with, so now it's time to focus on the off-season. For all things Pels, we bring in Gus Kattengell on the show. I don't know about you, Gus, but I watched the playing games the last few games. With no Pelicans, those are a rough watch, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did our final kind of recap podcast. Antonio Daniels was on there, and, we opened up, with the greet. Hey, it's nice to see everybody. Graphs on there. Andrew Lopez, our television sideline reporter, and the first thing AD goes, this stinks. Like, this stinks. You want to watch it. And, I'm watching last night, and you're talking about the play-in game, and I'm watching that Clippers-Warriors game. So it's past 11. Kids asleep, wife's asleep.
I'm asleep.
I'm still up. I'm ready to go. And then Draymond Green gets that steal. Steph Curry hits that three, puts him to bed. And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's just there's something to that. And I think it led perfectly to our podcast in recapping the season, because that's what's missing. Fans miss it. The media miss it. But it's really until the players miss it that it fuels your motivation, that it gets you going for next season. That's kind of what I took on Monday and Tuesday, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yes, I'm with you. I'm ready for the postseason. It's a different animal. I miss those days, man, when that Smoothie King Center is packed to the gills and every possession matters, man. It's fun.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the opening line then. Zion's future in New Orleans, Pels trade possibilities, and we'll get a little NBA playoff preview in the B block. But first off, Zion played in 62 games this past season, second most since he got drafted by the team. Is that enough to bring him back, Gus? Finally, he's healthy? Yeah, I think you start with the person that makes the decisions, right? And that's Joe Dumars. And on Tuesday, Joe Dumars said, I don't plan on trading, Zion Williamson. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, you start there. Secondly, you go to what was said on Monday. And in Monday's player exit interview, Zion Williamson told us that, hey, New Orleans is home. And he actually brought up that most players, and name the names, he wasn't trying to make it like that. He's like, most players leave in the offseason. I live here. This is my home. I want to live here. I think that stood out to me, too. And you've been around the facility this year, too. I feel like this season, that has been different. The constant, man, this is my place. And even after losses, and we'll get into it, because there's a metric that tells you maybe how close or far they are, and that's 41, right? And clutch games that they've been in, that's half the season. So you're in position to win half of your games at the very least. But the point that I'm getting at is, in those games they didn't, you see that attitude. And on Monday, I didn't see the smiling, the, hey, I got time sort of thing. I think it's dawning on you, right? I mean, what did he say specifically? He touched on, I want Joe Dumars to take me under his wing. I want to go to playoff games. I need a different plan. Things need to be different because I want to experience the playoffs. I want to be in the playoffs. I want to do this for New Orleans. Those are things that are very specific. It's not just, hey, it'd be nice to be in the postseason. Hey, we'll get them next year. We'll do that. So I think if the person that runs the organization believes in him and wants him to be here, and he is bringing up that this is his home, and he's going to try to do things in the offseason to make sure that we're not in the same spot next year, all you can go on is what those two gentlemen say and move on from there. Yeah, and Dumars talked on Tuesday. He seems like a big fan of Zion. And he also squashed this talk of Zion can't play with Queen on the court at the same time.
It was interesting. He brought up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in Boston, and when those two guys came in, very dynamic scorers, right? And I think you probably know this better than me because you love your numbers with the show as well. But I think Brown and Tatum are the only two $350 million players on one team, right? No, seriously, they both were for the extension. That's a $500 million in two players. So, and that's pretty dynamic. But then you look at Tatum this year, didn't play because of a torn Achilles. Brown kind of put him in that spot, and right now, they're a favorite to win the East and go in the finals. They're that good of players, I guess, is the long view of what I was trying to say there. But I do think it's interesting that he used those two players as an example, in that when they first got there, they didn't know if they're going to work together, get into the gym, try to work together, because it is a very popular topic, right? I mean, I've seen your past shows. I read social media online. Can they work? Can they not work together? I think it's time. And I think when you look at this season on this team, the more certain lineups play together, the more success either individuals had or the team had. And I mean that, right? I mean, even when we get to Jeremiah Fears, from the starting lineup to the bench. He didn't go to the bench because he wasn't playing well totally. It was other guys got healthy, like some guy you might have heard of, DeJounte Murray. It was Herb Jones coming back. Those guys are starters, right? I mean, you got to put them in. So, but the more he was coming off the bench and he understood his role, I wouldn't even say accepted it. It's not like he was either going to play it or not. But the more he did it, you saw what he did. And he finishes the year with 3 straight 30-plus games and, you know, doing what he's doing and comfortable in doing that. So I do think there's some sense of continuity, which is an interesting question because not just with Z, but a lot of members on this roster, staff, all these different things. How much is it to change for change's sake or because we need change, and how much is it that you need continuity? The top 2 teams in the Eastern and Western Conference right now, or 2 teams that had a lot of losing before they started winning. What was it, 28, 29 games, 27 games in a row the Pistons lost 2 years ago? OKC, they were the definition of tanking and building all these, stockpiling all the draft picks. And when you take a look at the core nucleus of both of those teams, 2 things stood out. A, Joe Dumars said Troy Weaver had a say in both of those rosters, which I thought was interesting. And 2, though, more importantly, they lost together. They lost together. And I think that's, again, I go back to, you know, when they were all said and done, everyone's packing up their cameras and everything. That's what stood out to me on Monday. It wasn't jovial, and it shouldn't be. You're not in the postseason. You know, you shouldn't be okay with it. But it's what Coach Saban said back in the day, right? Everyone wants to win. Are you willing to sacrifice and do the things it takes to win? And that's every day. That's now. That's next week. That's sleep. That's working on your body. And hearing player after player say that. Player after player say, we need to get stronger. I need to spend time in the gym. Derik Queen, I'm going to, you know, spend time with DeAndre Jordan workout. Jeremiah Fears, I'm ready to do this. 6 to 7 players per Joe Dumars already asked, can we go watch the playoffs together? These are tangible things that are just more than words, I guess is what I'm saying. And I get it. Look, at the end of the day, you can want it, I can want it, fans can want it, players can want it. Actions, show me. We all know you want to be in the postseason. You have to do the things to get there.
Yeah. Biggest surprise this past season for you that was a positive? Would you say maybe Jeremiah Fears and the play of the rookies?
I think you have to start there.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would say going into the season, I wanted to say, hey, is Trey Murphy ready to take that next step? I think he has all of the physical attributes that you can possibly imagine to be an all-star player, to be a guy that could be a clutch, a closer. We even saw that in some games where the ball was in his hands late. So there were some things about certain players on this roster that you were excited to see. I watched, I think, a show earlier this week with you and Fazan. Y'all love your mock drafts. You're planning for the Saints draft. But what is it that you guys say to Juan? You're like, we hope this is, you don't know if any of those picks go, right? I mean, the Saints famously, how many first-round picks on both sides of the line didn't work out. Didn't pan out, or you didn't get the fifth-year option and all that. So the draft is a chance. You hope that it happens. You got 2 starters.
Yeah.
Well, now, whether because of injury or not, but you got 2 starters. And in their time there, they didn't just get 5 points, 10 points. They started because someone was hurt. I can close my eyes right now and think of that game they lost in November, but Derik Queen was doing some amazing things at the beginning of the season where you're like, this is unique. This is special. Victor Wembanyama's coming out guarding him. They're pushing him away from the top of the key, and he's finding, open passing lanes. You either can do that or you can't. I loved in that first road game against Phoenix. You see Jeremiah Fears giving the business to Dylan Brooks. And, Derik Queen. Like, I love you either are that person or you're not. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? This organization, this franchise need a little fight. Those dudes will have a little fight to them. So I absolutely think you have to start there as the biggest surprise, because you not only found guys that can help you, they did things this year that were legit NBA history, not just Pell's history, which it is history. Team history is team history. But they set NBA history. And that's not me trying to sugarcoat or paint a prettier picture. They set NBA history. Triple doubles for Derik Queen. Jeremiah Fears doing the youngest to do this, the youngest to do that. These are legit things that you do, and you can say, well, they played this and they played that. You still have to go do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to say I could go score 20.
Yeah.
Can I score 1? I like to think I could make a free throw, but I have to go do it. So I think when you think of all the different things that you saw them do this year, it's you have to start there, because they improved as the year went on too, and they're coachable. I think is the way I can look at it like that.
Yeah. Presser on Tuesday with Joe Dumars, he was asked, about getting back into the first round. They don't own a first-round pick. That was intriguing. He kind of like tipped his hand a little that, hey, we might be doing something late June there, because right now at Fox 8, we do not have a Pelicans draft show because they don't own a first-round pick. But maybe they are going to get back in, which means you might have to give up something to get back into that first round.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because the first thought that popped in my head was the famous meme of the GIF that has Joe with the two phones back in the day, you know, like that. But he said, hey, if we wanted to get into the draft, we could, right?
Yeah.
I think it's something like that, what he said, paraphrasing. So, and you know this. Again, going back to the Saints draft and the NFL draft, it's all about how much info's in there and how much not. And he even kind of went into a little detail as well around the trade deadline. Because, you know, like how much were those phone calls really there? It's like, man, we always get phone calls. So there's a lot of looking at possibilities or what teams may want, what players may want. And I think, Garland, as we started this broadcast tonight about the postseason, that probably has a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. What if there is a team or two that comes just shy? Yeah. What if there's a owner that, man, they got that taste of the conference finals of the second round, they want to go all in. So we need this person that maybe the Pelicans roster may have or something. So I think that's how I took it, of if we want to. In other words, he knows he has some assets. He's got some players on this roster that absolutely would be coveted. I don't think you have to go very deep to understand who those players probably are, right? What you value in the NBA, shooting and defense. So you could probably name the players on the roster. But do you want to do that? Again, I think that's going to be my, I guess, storyline to kind of pay attention to this summer, is how much is change a part of what you do. What I mean by change for change's sake, or change because this is what I needed to add. Because I think continuity is a big thing. Again, I go back to the two teams on top of each conference. They've been together a little bit. And, you know, you could be looking at another head coach. You could be looking at a different type of roster. At some point, you're going to need guys that play together and know how to play together. Yeah. To grow and go through the process, right? I mean, if not, it's going to be so hard to win like that.
Yeah. Final question for this block. Coach Dumars got ahead of it, or sorry, GM Joe Dumars got ahead of it, said that Borrego is going to be part of the coaching search. He's in the mix. Do you think this thing goes long? How long are we looking at here? Because he said there's not a list yet. I don't know. I think he has a list, but he's not going to give us every single card he has, huh?
I don't know. The time frame's interesting because, again, I go by what he says. And what he says is, you know, we're going to talk to people outside the building. He did say he's a candidate. And, look, I can only vouch and talk about what I saw with my eyes. And I think what was interesting was, if you were to ask me before we started taping, hey, what's the one thing that stood out with you with Coach Borrego in this year and why the team was competitive? Because, again, I know they didn't get the wins on there, which was more wins than last year. And half of the games this year, you were in position to win. You didn't close. That's for a different, topic. But you were there. And when you take a look at all of that and adding the mix and players like Joe Dumars said, hey, we thought Jordan Poole was going to come in and be this kind of player. And then you have the emergence of Jeremiah Fears. I got to play him, right, because of that. Derik Queen, I got to get the ball in his hands. But that changes. If I have the ball in his hands, somebody has the ball in their hands less. So I think when you look at this season, man, it's almost the approach changed by the week, by the month. So what I thought Coach Borrego did the best was to understand that. Coach the games in front of him was one of my biggest things, right? I mean, sometimes star players, Zion or other players, hey, we're going to go with this group that got us back when we were down 20. You go back to that Houston win here in the arena. It was like Bryce McGowan's and others, right? It wasn't. But my point is, he let players that were out there performing go out and do that. And a lot of times you don't see that at coaches. Hey, Garland, I know I love you, man, but we're paying Juan all that money. Juan's going to do the stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's how it works.
Got it.
But I think good coaches coach their roster and coach the games in front of them. But the number one thing, and that wasn't the number one thing, number one thing is communication. I think when you get to see him, and again, this was my first year going on the road and seeing it, and I'm not pulling the curtain back here in a bad way, but seeing the way he spoke to players at shoot-around, on the bus, in the hotel, after games, at practice, when there are no cameras, when there's no reason to do that other than to challenge a player or to help with extra stuff, when maybe playing time wasn't going to go, and seeing a little conversation on the side, I'm like, you know what? That's an adult. That's tough. Those are the tough things. And I think he referred to that back on Monday, that you don't shy away or run away from tough conversations. And I think that's that's a solid selling point for anybody to do that. So whoever that coach it's going to be, whether it's him full-time or anyone else they bring in, that's going to be their challenge. You have a mix of vets, you have a mix of youth, because you can't replace the entire roster, right? So how do you work with that? And I think that's going to be the hardest thing.